Hello to all my Jedi and Sith companions. I am your host, the Frugal Jedi. And let me tell you, it's been quite the weekend. Thursday night, I was feeling great, thinking tomorrow I'm going to be uploading my Xeno V3 Part 2 video. And then I noticed I had a bit of a sore throat. Friday came around. And then I thought I was feeling better Friday night. Until I woke up Saturday morning. Was I feeling any better by Sunday morning?
What in the hell was that all about?
And Monday morning, started feeling better. And today, I'm almost back to normal. A little bit of a stuffy nose and a little bit of a sore throat, but I'm going to make it. Today is part 2 of the Xeno V3 Pixel lightsaber review. Part 1, I showed you the features, functions, gesture controls out of the box. And a few of you commented that there was things I missed. And you're absolutely right, I did miss them. Today I'm going to show you how to unlock those hidden blade styles. And I'm also going to show you how to add new Soundfont, how to add music tracks, and how to understand the config file. Also, the melt function, which is supposed to produce a sound effect when you stab and hold down the button. The tip will light up and you can rotate the handle to change the color. None of the sound effects work for that. So I'm going to show you why they don't work, and I'll show you how I fixed it. So let's head on over to the PC, put the microSD card in, and begin. After inserting your microSD card into your PC, it'll show up as a USB drive with a letter. Mine is H, but yours might be a different letter. It doesn't matter. Very first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a backup. So I'm going to select all the folders, and I'm going to choose Copy. I'll create a folder on my desktop. I'll call it Xeno V3 Backup. And I'll paste all my files into here. And now I have a backup. I also recommend copying your backup folder to cloud storage, just so you have it in 2 locations. So having a look at the contents of the microSD card, you can see numbered folders from 1 to 34 and a setting folder. The numbered folders are your sound fonts. So if I go into number 1, I have a whole list of different files. I have sound effects for begin drag, begin lock, melt, blaster sound effects, clash, and you can see that there are multiple different types of clash sound effects for this sound font, drag, end drag, and so forth. If you want to know what sound font this is, double click on the file called font, or font with 1 in brackets.
The Chosen.
So this is the Chosen. If I want to make it really easy, I like to create a text file, and I put an underscore, and then I call it Chosen. So next time I go into folder number 1, I can see that it's chosen right there. Each folder also has this .font file. This .font file is automatically created by the Saber, and what this does is it tells the XENO V3 soundboard what files are in the folder. And you can even look at this. So if I right click it and choose Open With, I click on Notepad, choose Always, and now you can see the contents of that file. So it shows that for swing low or swing L, there are 2 files, numbered 1 and the last one numbered 2. If I have a look in my folder, sure enough, for my swing L files, there are 2 of them. So same thing with swing. Swing, it starts with number 1 and ends with number 16, which is shown right here. You don't really have to touch the .font file, because the easiest way is, if you're going to be adding any more songs or any more effects, is just delete the .font. When you choose that sound font on the Saber, it'll automatically recreate this file, because it'll scan for any new files and it'll adjust the file as needed, which is really cool. Let's have a look at the setting folder. In the setting folder, this is where all the sound effects for your blade styles, your battery level, when you connect Bluetooth, and there are tons of different files because you'll be able to add more blade styles in the future, and your effects, and then your volumes and your power level. And again, you're not going to be touching these files. The one file that you're going to touch is the config file. Let's just back up here, and there it is. If I open this file, it's going to open in Notepad, and if it doesn't open in Notepad, just right click and choose Notepad. Make sure that you have word wrap enabled so that it doesn't cut off on the end. It'll just wrap the next sentence around if your monitor is small. And it always tells you to save an original, so we've already done that. And let's have a look at the different lines. This just tells you when the config file was created. And here you can choose if you have pixel or if you have RGB. And you can also do this with the Saber as well by holding down the power button for 13 seconds. It'll say RGB mode or pixel mode. So because I'm using a pixel lightsaber, I leave that at number 1. If you're going to be using the adapter and switching it to RGB, you can switch that to 0. Your main blade pixel length. The default blade is 92 centimeters or 36 inches, so we just leave this at 132. If you're using a shorter blade, like the 32-inch blade, you would reduce this number. And you can also do this in the Bluetooth app. If you have a crossguard, you can set the length of the crossguards, and since this is not crossguard, it's not going to do anything. The side blade delay time, meaning that if you have a crossguard, the main lightsaber blade will ignite, and then there will be a 200 millisecond delay before the 2 crossguards ignite. So you can adjust this if you want it to be slower delay or faster. The next line is your max volume. Leave it at 100. Don't increase it, because it gives you a very strict warning that any higher can damage the speaker and void your warranty. Leave it at 100. Here you can adjust the brightness of the blade. Again, you can do this in the Bluetooth app. And I just like to leave it at full brightness at 100%. Flash on clash. So when you strike the blade, will it make a sound effect and will it flash? 0 means off, 1 means on, so I'm just going to leave that on. Clash sensitivity. So how hard do you have to strike the blade for it to make the sound effect and light up? It says the default is 4.5 and I have mine set to 5. So I'll just change mine to 4.5. Deep sleep time. Defaults are on 1000 and off 10,000. So how long will it take before the saber goes into deep sleep? And I find that you can leave these numbers the way they are. If you want your saber to go into deep sleep quicker, you could just reduce this number. Motion controls, I like to leave them on, so I just have a number 1 there. Your push-pull on, so when you stab with the saber, it'll ignite it. And again, 1 values are on, 0s are off, so that's on. Push-pull off, meaning you pull the saber back towards you and it'll shut off. Adjust the sensitivity of push, so lower means easier to activate. So if you're finding that when you're pushing the saber and it's not turning on, you would lower that number. Same thing with pull, so pulling the saber towards you. If you want it to be easier to do, you set that number lower. So mine is set to 13 and the default is 8, so I'm going to set it to 8 just to be on the default. Swing on motion control, so swinging the saber, spinning it will turn on the saber. And you can adjust the sensitivity of the swing. And again, the lower the number, the more easier it is to turn the saber on while you spin it. Twisting, so twisting your wrist to turn on the saber, and twisting your wrist to turn off the saber. So again, 1s are on, and if I switch that to 0, it would disable it. And adjusting the sensitivity of the twist. If you find that you're twisting your wrist and you can't get that saber to turn on or off, lower the number. So I'll set mine back to the default of 250. The next section has to do with the length of time a prion will play for before igniting the saber. And if we have a look in our settings folder, you will see that there are 7 saber files, and these are the prion ignition sound effects. So let's have a listen to saber number 1 here. That sound effect is 1400 milliseconds. If we listen to saber 2, this should be around 4 seconds or 4000 milliseconds. You don't want to mess with these numbers because they match the length of the audio files that they correspond to. When we're able to create new prions, then you would add another line for blade 8, and then you would have a listen to how long blade 8 is, and then you would set the millisecond time according to how long the sound effect is. This next section is worded poorly, and I'm not even 100% sure what it does. I know it's not terribly important. It has something to do with putting the microSD card back into your saber and what sound font the saber will play when you do that. I'm just going to set it to 1. I don't know why it's set to 10, or if it means that whenever I start the saber it'll play sound font 10. I'm not 100% sure. Now this is the next section that I was telling you about. There are a whole bunch of different effects that are disabled. Velocity mode, torch mode, multi-block mode, multi-lock mode, lightning block, blaster mode, and ghost mode. So they're all off, and I'm going to enable them all by changing them to 1s. And afterwards I will demonstrate what they do and how they work. The next section is switch control sound. This is going to create sound effects for the button presses. So if your hilt doesn't have the light around the power button, and you're just doing it by timings in your head, this will give you an audio prompt. Now, because my saber has the ring of light, I don't really need to have any kind of audio cue, so I'll just leave that at 0. And we've made it to the last section of the config file. This is where we're going to be looking at the default font effects settings for every single font. And they've organized it quite nicely. So they give you an example here, and then they tell you what each letter means. So letter A is default hum, B is your blaster effect, C is force, and so forth and so forth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line, and I'm going to use a pound symbol, because you have to use a pound symbol to tell it that it's a comment. And I'm going to put that right there. I'm also going to just make that lowercase. And the reason I'm doing this is because just to show you which each section is and what the values are. So the first section here is the color of the blade. So font 1 is set to blue. This is your red value, which can be from 0 to 255. Your green value, same thing, and then your blue value. So blue 255 means pure blue. This next section, which is letter A, is set to number 1. If we have a look at A, it shows us the default hum light effect of each font. Fireblade is 0, Steady Blade is 1, Unstable 2, and so forth. So because my A is number 1, I know that font 1 is using Steady Blade. The next one is B, which is set to 0. So B is the default blaster effect. And there are 3 different types of blaster effects that you can choose from. So the first one is 0, the second one is 1, and the third one is 2. And you can also choose these using Bluetooth as well. They're going to look a little different, each blaster effect. The next section is C, so force effects. And there are 2 force effects to choose from, so either 0 or 1. The next section, D, is the lockup effect. Now lockup, there is only one lockup effect. So it's always going to be 0 until they allow us to add new lockup effects or they introduce more with another update. Letter E is the flash on clash effect. There are 3 different flash on clash effects that you can choose from. And for the sake of being different, we'll just change our flash on clash effect for font 1 to 1. F is the default style. Standard blade is 0, velocity blade is 1, torch blade 2, and so forth. And these are also where the special preons are stored. So the first preon is number 5. And there are 7 preons. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I want this just to be a standard blade. G is the speed of the on or the out. So how fast will the saber extend? 200 milliseconds means that it's going to extend very quickly. So the lower the number, the quicker the action. H is the off speed or the retraction speed. If I want it to retract slowly, I have a high number. If I want it to retract quickly, I would set that to a lower number. And that's it for the config file. And you can go all the way to the end, and we are going to be coming back here when I show you how to add a new sound font. But for now, we are done with the config file. So I'm going to close it and save it. Now I'm going to show you how to add a new sound font to the Xeno V3. Grayscalefonts.com is a great place to start because they have free sound fonts, and they also have extra crispity sound fonts if you want something a little fancier. I'll choose a free sound font, and I'm going to choose Masterless. I click download. And they have already updated and included the package for Xeno 3. So I'm going to click on that one and choose download. Okay, it's downloaded, so let's go to my download folder. And there it is, Xeno 3. I choose extract all. I click extract. And it opened up the folder. So now this Mac OS X is if you're using an Apple computer. So I'm not using that. I don't need that. I'm just going to open up the Xeno V3. And here are all the files I need. And they're already numbered, which is great. All I have to do is copy this folder and rename it. So I'll copy it first, go to my USB drive, paste it, and I want to rename this, call it 35. And that's it for doing a sound font from Grayscale Fonts. I didn't have to rename anything. It was already all named. Very easy. If you are going to download fonts that have different file names, you just have to make sure that you rename the files to look the same as what's already there. For instance, some files use BLST or CLSH. So you just have to rename them and use the numbering in the brackets. And in the README, I can see that it's called Masterless. So I'm actually just going to rename that and call it like that. Now that I have the sound font in there, I want to go back to the config file and add the settings at the end of the config file. So I go back into my USB drive, my setting folder, find my config, and open it. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're going to add a new line. Font 35 equals. Now here's where I'm going to choose my color. A handy tool is an RGB color wheel, and you can find these online. And I'll put a link to this one here. This one's very easy to use. So from here I can choose my color. Now if I wanted a yellow, it shows me my values. And I can also type in the numbers manually as well. So for a pure yellow blade, I want red 255, green 255, and blue 0. So I'm going to choose red 255, green 255, and blue at 0. And then a comma. The next section, which is A, is the hum effect. I think this would look really cool as a fire blade, so I'm going to choose 0. And then a comma. The blaster light effect, I'll just leave it at 0. The force light effect, we'll try the second one. The lockup effect, well, there's only the 0. The flash on clash effect, let's try the third one, which is number 2. Just remember that it starts with 0, so 0 is 1, and 1 is 2, and 2 is 3. And the default style, I'm going to use just a standard blade. I don't want to use a Preon, and I don't want to use these other new blade styles which I enabled. So we're just going to leave it as 0 for steady. And the outspeed, I want this to extend slowly, so I'm going to use 800 milliseconds. And the retraction speed, I want it to retract a little quicker, so I'll use 500. So now that that's done, I save my file and I can close it. I'm now going to show you how to add music tracks to your lightsaber. First thing you'll need is a music file. I downloaded Futuristic Beat, which is a free music file, and it's an MP3. So we'll need to convert this MP3 into a WAV file. The program that I like to use is called Format Factory, and I'll put a link in the description that'll take you to the download page for this. And I'm going to install it. I click Next, I click Next, I choose my install location, Next. When you get to the optional offers consent, choose Decline. When it asks you if you want to use the bright data, choose I prefer limited use. And then click Finish. And Format Factory will open up and it looks like this. So you want to click on the audio section or the audio tab. And you want to click where it says Wave. And you want to choose where it's going to output that file to. So I'm going to choose Output to Source File Folder. So that means it's going to put the file in the exact same place where it read it from, which will be Downloads. I take my file, I drag it into this window. And one last thing, which is very important, is to click Output Setting. Sample rate, 44,100. Channel, set it to 1 mono. Those two things are really important. Remember that your lightsaber doesn't have stereo speakers, it's a mono speaker. And it has to be able to read it at the right sample rate, and 44,100 hertz is the correct one. I press OK. I press OK at the bottom right, and then I click Start. And that's finished. I check my download file folder and I see that there's the WAV file. I'm going to copy this file and we'll put it into that new Soundfont folder and paste it. You have to rename it, so it has to be track, and this is the first one, so track space open bracket 1 close bracket. And now we have a music file in that new Soundfont. If I want to also put it in a different Soundfont, I can. So we'll put it into number 1, which is the chosen. And I paste it. Now, because I've added it to an already existing sound font, this .font file doesn't recognize that there is a track. And you can see it's not listed there. So whenever I add music to an existing Soundfont folder, delete that .font file. it'll automatically be recreated once I select the Soundfont on my lightsaber. So it's perfectly safe to do. And that is all there is to adding music files to your lightsaber. The last thing I'm going to show you how to fix is the melt sound effect. Because right now, it doesn't work. The effect works, and I'm going to adjust the exposure to show you. And as I twist it around, you'll see it changing color. It goes from white to purple. But there's no sound effect. So that needs to be fixed. So let's get to it. Every sound font that is pre-installed on the Xeno V3 have the melt sound effects. And there are 3 files in each sound font. You have begin melt, end melt, and melt. And it doesn't matter what sound font you try, none of them will play the sound effects for melt. I know that all the other sound effects work. So what's different about the melt files? So let's find out. I'm going to play the hum file. And I'm using VLC Media Player for a reason. So let's open that up. I'm just going to pause that. I go to Tools, Media Information, and I look at codec. And what do I notice? Channel set to mono. The sample rate is 44,100 Hertz, bits per sample 16. Okay, let's try another one. Again, I can go to Media Information, and again, you can see that it's the exact same information. Now watch what happens when I choose Melt. Pause it, again, go to Media Information, check the codec. Aha! The sample rate is 96,000 Hertz. That is not supported on the Xeno V3. So that needs to get fixed. How do we fix that? Well, we open Format Factory. I choose Convert to Wave. I'm going to choose Output to Source File folder. Take my file, drag it in. Click Output Settings. And here I change my sample rate to 44,100. My channel to mono. Press OK. Press OK, click Start, and it finished. When I refresh the contents of the folder, you can see the new Begin Melt file, and they added a tilde with the 1. So now if I double-click this one, check the information, you can see that it now has the right sample rate. So I can go ahead and delete the old one and rename the new one like that. And then I'll have to go and do the same thing for end melt and the same thing for melt. And I have to do that 34 times. And you're thinking, my gosh, this is going to take forever. Well, because I'm such a nice guy, I already went and fixed all the files, and I put them on the Frugal Jedi's Google Drive, so you can download all the fixed wave files and not have to do this yourself. I'll put a link in the description that'll take you right to this zip file. I'm going to download it. Go to your Downloads folder, extract all, and open up the folder. From here, you want to select all the files, Control A, press copy, and then go to your USB drive and paste them. It's going to say the destination has 102 file names with the same names. Go ahead and replace the files. So this is automatically going to fix all of the melt files in all the Soundfont folders. Now we are done fiddling with the microSD card. I'm going to right click on my USB drive, choose eject, and put the microSD card back in the Saber and demonstrate to you all the new effects and show you the new sound font, the new music track, and show you how the melt function works now. Let's start by checking out that new sound font. One thing I didn't mention in part 1 is when you use motion control to select your sound font,
New Horizon,
it'll cycle through the numbers from lowest to highest. If I want to go backwards through the list, you hold down the button.
The Chosen,
So I'm back at sound font 1, and we'll do that again. And there is the new sound font. And there are 3 different ways that you can start your Saber. You can spin it, we enable the push, or you can do twist. So spinning, very simple, just give it a good spin. And turns on. You have your twist off, your twist on, and you notice that it's yellow, like we programmed it with the fire blade. We can also push on, so just push towards, and pull off, pull back quickly. We also put that music track on the Saber, so let's see if it plays. Sure enough, it does. Now let's look at the new effects that we enabled.
Velocity mode,
So I hold the button down for 3 light flashes and it switches to velocity mode. And it starts off with a very short blade. And as we swing it, the faster you swing it, the further it reaches out. And then it retracts back in. Like that.
torch mode,
So torch mode works by how the blade is angled. So if I have it pointing straight up like that, it'll light up the entire blade. And then as I start to tilt it, you'll see it gets shorter and shorter. It's as if you have like a torch, right? So the fire would be crawling up the blade. Really cool.
blaster mode,
So blaster mode, you've seen this before. You press the button down. And you get that neat effect.
ghost mode,
Ghost mode, if you keep the blade incredibly still, it gets very dim. And then as you start to move it around, it gets brighter and brighter. I'll go over the gesture controls one more time. You have stab, just push forward. and the tip will light up white. You have tip drag, hold the button down till it blinks once, let go, and you get tip drag. Melt. Now that we've fixed the audio files, you're actually going to hear the sound effect for melt. The tip will light up, and as you turn the handle or turn the hilt, it'll change color. And you can hear that melt, and you can see it changing from red to white. Click the button to stop it. You have force lightning repel. Same idea, hold the button down, but this time pull towards you. And you get that force lightning repel. You have force effects. Click the button, twist your wrist, and you get the force effects. Lockup, hold the button down while you strike the blade. Click the button again to stop it. Now there's two more modes that we enabled in the config file, which is multi-blast and multi-lock mode. So multi-blast or multi-blaster mode means that rather than having to press the button to do blaster blocks, the saber will automatically do them when you swing the saber into a position at a quick speed. And to enable multi-blast mode, hold the button down and swing the saber very fast.
Enter multi-block mode.
It says enter multi-block mode. Now, you can just move the saber around and it'll automatically do it, which is cool. To exit multi-block mode, again, hold the button down, swing it very fast.
Exit multi-block mode.
And that's that. And the last thing is the multi-lock mode. So to do lockup, normally you hold the button down, strike the blade. So we'll do that. Now to enter multi-lock mode, I press the button till it blinks once.
Enter multi-lock mode.
Now anytime I strike the blade, I don't have to press the button, it'll automatically go into lock mode. Again. To exit multi-lock mode, go into lock mode. Hold the button down till it blinks once. And it exits multi-lock mode. So that covers all of the features and functions of Xeno V3 currently. There are more things to come in the future, we just have to wait and see. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please don't forget to click on that like, subscribe to my channel if you want to have more content like this, and hit the bell if you want to stay notified whenever I release a new video. I've also enabled Super Thanks. Super Thanks is a way for you to show support for me, and you can give me a little bit of a $2 or $5 bonus if this really helped you out. Of course, I don't expect anyone to pay. You can pay absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter to me, but the option is there. And you will help support me and keep my content going. I have been your host, the Frugal Jedi. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.